It's Tuesday, April 11. In the headlines, in local news, BOJ says current inflation of 7.8% is above its target. In business news, global services sector readies to integrate artificial intelligence. In regional news, in Guyana, government and health organizations partner to eradicate diseases. In international news, England braces for healthcare crisis as workers strike. In sports news, Jamaica leaves 50th Carifta Games with 78 medals, including 40 gold. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, JCTU, Helen Davis White, says the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service will be meeting with trade union leaders this Thursday, April 13. The JCTU had served a 10-day ultimatum on the ministry, alleging that it had breached the heads of agreement under the Compensation Review Program. Among the issues of concern is the growing discontent among public sector employees over their adjusted salaries under the Compensation Review Program. Mrs. Davis-White is insisting that some elements of the salary restructuring being implemented by the government were not agreed by the unions. Senior Deputy Governor of the Bank of Jamaica, Dr. Wayne Robinson, has revealed that inflation in the country has fallen to 7.8%. In a session of the series JIS think tank, Dr. Robinson, joined by several top officers from the bank, indicated that the inflation logged is above the target of the BOJ. Maya Chung has more.
Inflation is a central issue to everyday life for all Jamaicans. The fact is, Jamaica, along with the rest of the world, have been feeling the effects of high and rising inflation. Bank of Jamaica is the institution in Jamaica that is mandated by law to actually manage inflation. And so in that regard, we actually responded very swiftly and very early and very decisively to the increase in inflation that we've been seeing, which was actually spurred by rising inflation globally. And of course, Jamaica is open and we rely a lot on imports for not just production purposes, but also for consumption purposes. Now, as a result of our policy actions, along with the fact that we have been seeing a lowering in the prices of some international commodities over the past 10 months or so, we have been seeing a general reduction in the rate of inflation. The inflation rate last year, April, actually peaked at 11.8%. But it fell to 9.4% in December. And the latest information as of February, published by Statin, we saw where the inflation actually fell further to 7.8%.
According to the BOJ team, the number, while not alarming, is still not satisfactory to the BOJ.
But at 7.8%, this rate of price increase is actually still too high and is above the bank's inflation target of 4% to 6%. However, the good news is that inflation is on a downward path, and Bank of Jamaica is cautiously optimistic that inflation will return to the 4 to 6% target range by the end of this year.
The officials used the platform to explain why Jamaicans should pay attention to national inflation rates.
At this time, inflation is quite topical. It is front and center in everyone's mind based on what's happening globally and domestically. But when you look, what exactly is inflation? Inflation is a general or broad-based increase in prices, and it is usually measured over some specific period, typically a year. And when I say broad-based, I really mean it. So you can't look at, say, the price of patties, a utility bill, and say, inflation has gone up. You have to look really at a range of goods and services. How is this range of goods and services determined? All right, so what happens is Jamaica's Statistical Institute, They do a survey of household expenditure. And based on this survey, they tell us what the typical Jamaican consumes over any specific period. And that determines a basket of goods and services. So this basket includes so much things. It includes utilities, it includes food, it includes transport, it includes what you spend on health services, education. So it's really capturing a gamut of things that you spend and purchase on typically. Now we track how the prices of these goods and services change over time. And that is what inflation is.
For the news on PBCJ, I am Maya Chung.
We are seeing an increase in respiratory diseases among children in many parts of the world. What are the symptoms? What are the red flags, and how can parents protect their children? We hear more from PAHO's Dr. Wilson Ware in this Living Healthy report.
Wilson, speak to us about this spike that we are seeing in respiratory diseases in children.
We are seeing a spike in respiratory diseases in children, particularly those under 10 years of age, beyond the typical flu season we usually experience during fall and winter months. This unusual spike in cases has been reported in several countries in Europe, including France, Netherlands, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, and also in the United States. They are seeing an increasing number of children hospitalized with acute respiratory infections caused by common respiratory viruses such as influenza, parainfluenza, respiratory syncytial virus commonly called RSV, adenoviruses, and coronaviruses including COVID-19. In addition, we are also seeing increasing cases of pharyngitis and skin infection caused by a bacteria called group A streptococcal infection. This may be because we are back to relative normalcy after COVID-19 and seeing viruses and bacteria spread again. Maybe some children did not have prior infections, so don't have any built-in immunity. Or maybe some of these viruses changed just a little bit and seem to be spreading faster. Maybe some children are getting multiple infections, so becoming more sicker than usual. So it could be any of these reasons as we try to figure out which particular one.
Wilson, what are the symptoms, what are the red flags that the parents should be looking out for?
Typically, children will have a cold or flu-like symptoms with a runny nose or nasal congestion, sneezing with scratched throat, irritating throat, a cough. Some might have a fever or change in their ability to eat or drink. In most cases, parents and caregivers can manage these symptoms. However, in some cases, it may be associated with group A streptococcal infection. In this case, children will have a sore throat, a headache, muscle pains, and a fever, along with a fine reddish rash, which is called scarlet fever. But watch out for the red flags. Worsening of these symptoms, specifically if a child is breathing too fast or having trouble breathing with the upper tummy getting sucked in, which we call chest indrawing, or when the lips or skin are turning blue, or when the child is constantly running a high temperature or throwing up, or is unable to breastfeed, drink, or eat. And in case of group A streptococcal infection, they have painful skin and bones. Then you know it's time to immediately consult a health provider or go to hospital.
Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
The Jamaican Global Services Sector, GSS, is preparing to adopt artificial intelligence AI to enhance and support its work, with several industry players already incorporating the technology. According to President of the Global Services Association of Jamaica, GSAJ, Anand Biradar, the sector has a 12 to 18-month window to prepare for the integration of AI and maximize the benefits. The GSAJ is set to exhibit AI and other new technologies and opportunities in the global services sector at the Outsource to Jamaica 2023 conference on May 10 and May 11 at the Jewel Grand Montego Bay All-Inclusive Resort and Spa in St. James. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Thursday, April 6, the US dollar sold for an average of $152.70. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $118.43. The pound sterling traded for $191.68, and the euro sold for an average of $169.92. In GSE trading, the GSE index advanced by 1,175 points. The junior market index advanced by 5 points. The combined market index advanced by 1,147 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index advanced by 1,349 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 104 stocks, of which 46 advanced, 39 declined, and 19 traded firm. Stocks advanced for AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, Caribbean Cement Company Limited, and Derrimont Trading Company Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and Barita Investments Limited. Trading firm were Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited, Caribbean Cream Limited, and Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited. The overall volume leaders were Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 3 million units, Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financials, and Waketon Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted 501 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Goddard Enterprises Limited was the volume leader with 6,000 shares. They were followed by First Caribbean International Bank, which traded over 800 shares. In regional business, with over 150 years of experience extracting oil and gas, many of Trinidad and Tobago's energy service companies have been exporting their expertise. TTT's Terry & Brown Campbell highlights one of the sector's most experienced service companies.
Founded in 1935, IAL Engineering Services Limited is one of the oldest service companies in TNT. General Operations Manager of the company, Dennis Ramota, explained the firm was originally registered as Integrated Agencies Limited, representing foreign equipment manufacturers.
Over the years, we've grown and developed to the point where we were no longer an agency-type company. We were more of an engineering firm. Back then, when they drill oil and gas wells, you needed, valves, chokes, different types of oil field equipment.
Mr. Ramota said the group rebranded in 2002, though the company still carries those original product lines.
We've expanded, into machining, manufacturing, servicing, pressure testing, and the whole integrated service. Right? We've removed the silos between business units and we've merged into an integrated service solution company.
Mr. Ramota explained the company is internationally certified for their quality management system, environmental management, as well as their health and safety systems.
We had $40 million US in terms of plant process equipment. So we've had to do a steady transition into the Guapo, Point 14 area. Right? We currently reside on 10 acres, which has given us the room to handle tubulars, 40-foot trailer trucks, and so on. The move was strategic in terms of we are closer to our key customers, Heritage Petroleum, so we basically at their doorsteps.
He added the company's proximity to the Bitcoin pipe yard facility in Lebray, where other key energy sector companies operate, is also convenient.
Over the years, we started to represent foreign technology partners, Valorec out of France, Tenaris out of Argentina, and the American Petroleum Institute. So the products that we export would go into high-profile drill ships and rigs across the globe.
In international business, U.S. stock indexes clawed back from steep losses to end mixed as investors digested Friday's employment report and prepared for an eventful week of inflation data and bank earnings.
U.S. stocks ended Monday little changed after suffering steep losses earlier in the trading session. Investors reacted to the jobs report out Friday when markets were closed for Good Friday and prepared for a busy week of data and bank earnings. The Dow Industrials rose 0.3%, the S&P 500 gained 0.1%, and the Nasdaq fell less than 0.1%. The jobs report showed robust payrolls growth and a welcome but modest wage inflation cooldown. While it signaled the Federal Reserve's restrictive policies beginning to have its intended economic dampening effect, it raised the odds that the central bank will move forward with another quarter-point increase to the Fed funds target rate at its May policy meeting. Data later this week on consumer and producer prices will shed light on the status of inflation, while Friday brings earnings from several big banks, including Wells Fargo. Winthrop Capital Markets Chief Portfolio Manager Adam Coons likes the stock.
So on the equity side, one thing that we're looking at are banks. They've obviously traded off quite sharply, so we are seeing some values in regional banks and what we would call the more supranational regional banks. So things like Wells Fargo, Huntington, and PNC. We think that those have oversold. We think that their balance sheets are firm. We think that they have good assets. And their asset liability matching is on point. So we think those are banks that are just fine, just kind of names that have been thrown out with, baby with the bathwater type mentalities.
Stocks making moves Monday included shale oil producer Pioneer Natural Resources, which climbed 6% following a report that ExxonMobil held preliminary talks with the company about a potential acquisition. Also, Charles Schwab, which added 5% after reporting its second highest ever influx of client assets in March.
In market data for oil prices steadied as Chinese inflation data pointed to persistently weak demand but a softer dollar and hopes that the Federal Reserve might ease up on its policy tightening after a key U.S. inflation report this week provided support. Brent crude futures slipped 7 cents to $84.11 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate futures rose 4 cents to $79.78. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
In regional news, we begin in Barbados, where a local information technology expert says while international law enforcement has been able to bust major cyber criminals in recent times, individual Barbadians will still have to start paying more serious attention to their own personal cybersecurity when using their various devices.
There's some level of personal responsibility that each and every one of us need to do to protect ourselves. I will not put myself at risk, and that comes from understanding your environment, understanding the risk that is involved in living every day. So why would we give up all our personal responsibility to be 100% government's responsibility in terms of how we protect ourselves digitally? Yes, the government has a role to play, and it should be looking to do more, continues to look to improve what it does as an individual government across the region, but collectively we've reached a point where governments must come together at this critical point in time. There are more comprehensive approaches. There's more internet security bundles. One of the bundles that I will tell individuals to look out for are the ones that actually track your credit card as well as your email address. So we've gone beyond antivirus, and we're now looking at things that track your personal data. So things such as your email address, your credit card, sometimes even your name, when your name is mentioned, so you're protecting your personal brand.
The Guyanese government has partnered with the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, to eliminate 5 key infectious diseases from the island. We have more in this report.
Government remains committed that these diseases can be eradicated from Guyana with the technical support from PAHO WHO. The diseases include filaria, leprosy, and leishmaniasis. This was disclosed by Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony during remarks on Saturday at the commissioning of the Paramakatoi Smart Hospital, Region 8.
We are hoping that in a couple of years from now, we can declare Guyana to be filaria free, right? So that's one of the projects that we have with PAHO. Right now, at the national level, we have considered that it has been eliminated nationally, but there are still some pockets where we need to work to eliminate it in those particular areas. And that's the kind of targeted work that we are doing with PAHO.
Government will be launching an interesting immunization program shortly.
We'll give the vaccine, but not in the form of an injection.
The Cabinet of St. Kitts and Nevis has endorsed a phased approach to reducing and eliminating single-use plastics. This was a topic at last week's post-cabinet briefing. More from SKN Newsline.
In another significant step towards nurturing positive environmental stewardship among our citizens and residents, the Cabinet endorsed the phased approach to reducing and eliminating single-use plastics in St. Kitts and Nevis. Single-use plastics include items such as plastic bags, straws, soda and water bottles, and foam food containers. The Department of Environment continues to engage stakeholders throughout the Federation on reducing waste and pollution, as well as promotion of environmentally friendly materials and products. Your government will continue to ensure that suitable, affordable alternatives to single-use plastics are readily available to all. Transitioning to a sustainable island state means promoting personal responsibility and adhering to the tagline, "Waste, our responsibility."
The Cabinet also approved the establishment of a consulate of St. Kitts and Nevis in Mumbai, India, and the appointment of Ms. Farhana Vora as honorary consul.
The Cabinet approved the establishment of a consulate of St. Kitts and Nevis in Mumbai, India, and the appointment of Ms. Farhana Vora as honorary consul. St. Kitts and Nevis and India share a common history as former British colonies and have a well-established diplomatic relationship. Ms. Vora comes with over 25 years of global experience in branding, retail, luxury goods, and education. An honorary consul is an official representative of the government whose main activities are to assist and protect citizens of the country which he or she represents, and to promote trade, tourism, and culture, and to facilitate friendship between the people of the two countries.
Meanwhile, Dr. Natta also noted that the government approved the ratification of the agreement on the privileges and immunities of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The agreement defines the legal capacity, privileges, and immunities that are normally accorded to the agency. Ratification of the agreement will pave the way for the agency to activate their technical cooperation teams and deploy experts to St. Kitts and Nevis, especially in the areas of agriculture, water, human health, radiation safety, and security. Andre Huey, SKN Newsline.
In international news, China has warned that peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait and independence for Taiwan are mutually exclusive, as it has concluded 3 days of live fire drills near the self-governed island. The warning is in response to Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen's recent trip to the United States.
3 days of exercises involving Chinese military aircraft and warships have heightened tensions across the Taiwan Strait. Beijing says the drills simulated precision attacks against targets on the island and its complete encirclement, and involved the Shandong aircraft carrier. Taiwan scrambled fighter jets in response. It follows last week's visit by Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen to California, where she met U.S. Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy. Beijing says the exercises send a clear warning to any factional forces in Taiwan who may be seeking full independence for the island, which China regards as a breakaway province.
This is a stern warning to the provocative activities of Taiwan independent successionist forces and collusion with the external forces, and a necessary move to safeguard national sovereignty and territorial integrity.
Taiwan's defense ministry has condemned the drills, accusing Beijing of destabilizing the region and declaring the island will continue with its own system of government.
The armed forces will uphold our sovereignty and maintain our national security in a composed, rational, and thoughtful manner.
With presidential elections next year, the current administration's policy of keeping China at a distance is popular among many Taiwanese.
Wanting to annex Taiwan is quite a weird thing. It's like if I were to say a place that I want to have and then just say that I want to annex it. That doesn't sound very reasonable. Historically, there were some connections, but that is not to say that Taiwan belongs to China.
Most ordinary people probably aren't afraid of the drills, with the main reason being that everyone thinks that China won't start a war.
China considers Taiwan part of its territory and has not ruled out using force to take it. Rob McBride, Al Jazeera.
England is bracing for health care chaos as tens of thousands of junior doctors walk off the job for a 4-day strike. It is expected to be the most disruptive job action in the history of National Health Service. More from Al Jazeera.
For a British junior doctor like Ashley Macklin-Doherty, free time away from work is rare and far from relaxing. She's a cancer specialist with a young child at home, and she's currently struggling to pay her bills in Britain's capital, also its most expensive city.
When I'm waking up at 2 in the morning, worried about the patient that I've just given chemotherapy to, I want to also feel like I don't have to also wake up worrying about the credit card bills and the gas bills and the energy, you know, the things that everyone else is worrying about as well.
Thanks in part to these financial pressures, she's joining tens of thousands of other doctors in strike action that starts today. It's the second such strike this year, with the medical union that represents young doctors demanding a 35% pay rise from the government after years of below-inflation wage increases. Macklin-Doherty says due to the government's spending choices, UK healthcare is like a sinking ship.
If you're in a system where the walls are crumbling around you, which I think is very much linked to pay cuts, you then get to a kind of critical point where you have to either stand up for what you believe in, or you just accept and leave.
Such stress has driven thousands of British doctors out of the profession or into depression, with some even considering suicide, according to Zaid Al-Najjar.
They struggle more than they used to, mainly due to the lack of resources now and the conditions under which they have to work, and that's been exacerbated by the pandemic.
Al-Najjar is the medical director of an organisation that treats doctors with mental health difficulties and says many of their problems are systemic, given reduced resources and staff shortages.
A lot of it is due to excessive workload, working conditions, worry about making errors, worries about causing harm, worry about not being able to provide what it is that you felt you could provide going into the profession.
Burnout rates in British medicine were high before the pandemic, the pressures now driving them even higher. Many doctors feel strike action is the only remaining recourse to help the public and politicians realise these problems are real and require rapid resolutions. Willem Marks, Al Jazeera, London.
In sports, Jamaica closed the show at the 50th Carifta Games in the Bahamas, with Rashawn Clark being named Austin Seeley Award winner. Clark won in the 400-meter hurdles not long after his second leg in the under-20 4x400 led to a dominant win for the Jamaicans. The under-17 girls won the title in 3.43 minutes ahead of Barbados and Bahamas. The under-17 boys dominated the tracks in 3.19, with Bahamas and Trinidad and Tobago coming after them. In the under-20 section, the under-20 girls won their race, with Trinidad and Tobago second and Bahamas third. The under-20 boys won their sprint in 3 minutes 7 seconds, with Trinidad and Tobago second and Bahamas third. Jamaican sprinter Alana Reid, despite her eventual withdrawal from the under-20 girls 200 meters at the Games, in her prediction prior to the team's departure for the Bahamas on April 7, expressed high personal hopes for her and her team's performance at the legendary Games.
It's a moment for me that I really appreciate. It's just for me to go out there and do my utmost best for my team and for everybody back home, and I believe that I'll come out on top.
And that's the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBC Jamaica. Thank you so much for watching.